What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Manuscripts. I'm SD Howard. I'm one of the resident author coaches here. And today we're going to be talking about why you may want to be selling your book on your website and why you may not want to. Believe it or not, it's actually far more complicated than it might seem. Now, when I was getting ready to set up my stuff, and I'm using Squarespace, which we'll kind of go into more, once we get to that in the video. But it was actually very, very difficult to do what I wanted to do, to make it how I wanted to make it. And so I stopped actually selling books via my website. Now, by selling books, I'm meaning signed author copies. And so we're going to go into some of the more technical aspects of this rather than just like setting up a store and just like, oh, I'm just going to start charging people money. There's actually a little bit more to it. So without any further ado, let's kick it off. I'm really excited to kind of dive into this because as someone who tends to deal on the more technical side of authoring, I've seen a lot of people kind of stumble into this and they haven't done it well, and it usually ends up causing a lot of frustration for them. So let's start with the basics. Selling from a website. There are a lot of perks to selling signed copies from your website, but you need to know how to get started, right? Because you want to set yourself up for success with this to avoid a lot of the headaches that come later on down the road and come back to bite you in the butt. So let's avoid that. So step one, you need to make a shift in your thinking. So when you publish a book, you're no longer just an author, you are a small business owner. So you have to be thinking like a business person, right? Because you have a product that you are now selling. And it doesn't matter whether it is on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or anywhere else. If you are selling a book, you are a small business and you have a product, okay? And especially on your website, you have to have that mentality. It's not a fun mentality necessarily, but it is necessary for the long-term success of your authoring career. So your first priority should be to set up a business name, ideally under an LLC or a sole proprietorship. Now, there's going to be some differences from state to state. I'm in Oregon, and what I have chosen to do is set up a sole proprietorship. Now, an LLC basically is kind of that next step up. It tends to provide some more legal protection, but because every state is so unbelievably and frustratingly different, you're going to want to talk to a CPA to make sure that you are finding out which one is the right one for you and for your business and what it is exactly that you're going to need to get it set up. Most often, it is going to require some form of payment, right? So you want to make sure that you're saving up ideally probably around $100 to make sure that when you start this, you have the funds to be able to do so. Okay. So next up is once that's done, you're going to go to your bank and you're going to set up a business banking account under your business name. It makes it 1,000 times easier to manage funds and do taxes. Trust me on this. You do not want to have your business funds mingling with your personal funds in the same account. It just causes a massive headache for you. Putting everything under your LLC or sole proprietorship or S Corp or however you end up setting it up, and then having dedicated banking account that all the funds go to makes it so much easier. And then you just pay yourself from that business fund. Okay. Next, with that out of the way, you're going to want to set up some form of business account on Square, PayPal, Stripe, Venmo. I mean, you don't have to do all of them. The ones that I use primarily are Square and Stripe. Square and PayPal. Just tends to be the easiest. Square, you can literally take it anywhere with you. So it's pretty fantastic. And basically every payment processor is going to have some website integration, right? No matter whether it's Wix, Squarespace, Weebly, or even WordPress, you're going to have some form of integration with those payment processors. They're all going to take a fee. They're all going to have a payment processing fee. It is what it is. You just need to take that into account, which we'll talk about. So step 2, FCs, VCs, and BEPs. Oh my. So what you need is to take account your fixed costs, such as printing the book, the variable costs, such as shipping, payment fees, sales tax, etc., and then your break-even point when selling a physical product. And your break-even point basically says, this is the minimum I have to make to cover said costs before I start making an actual profit on this, okay? We're going to kind of break it down. Now, granted, at the time of doing this recording, I'm sure some things will probably have changed by the time that you're watching it later on in the future. We'll try to update this as much as we can. But the publishing industry, like Ingram Spark, in November of 2021, increased its prices for hardcover editions. And as of now in 2022, I believe in March, they're going to be increasing the cost of premium paperbacks. There may be some fluctuations and some additional charges or an increase in the charges that they're doing through Ingram Spark. Can attest to Amazon, but I'm using Ingram Spark numbers for this video, just so that way you're aware, all right? And I'll try and break it down a little bit as I go. So here's the breakdown for my book. This will have changed a little bit, probably in March by the time this video comes out. And the cost per book is probably going to have increased, but we're going to use what we have. So one book costs me about $5.94 to print. Okay. And again, through Ingram Spark. I know that that's what my cost is going to be per book. Now they have a $1.99 handling fee, whatever. And then the shipping cost is $19.97. So my total cost to print one paperback book is $27.90. Okay. Now, Amazon is always going to be cheaper when it comes to printing the book. There's some debate whether the shipping kind of evens out in the long run. I've done a comparison, and Amazon was cheaper by, maybe like $50 or so. So, if you're going to get author copies, it's going to be less expensive through Amazon. I liked the quality of Ingram Spark. So the next thing is, now we're going to look at what I need to sell to make a profit. Okay, so one signed copy needs to sell for at least $30 through my website, and this does not count shipping. The charges that I get per transaction is roughly $1.78. Okay, so my total variable cost, including the printing and shipping from Ingram, is about $29.68. My gross profit is a whopping 32 cents. My percent gross margin is about 1%. And my break-even point means that I need to sell at least one book to cover my costs, right? Because I've looked at it, I've totaled it up. My total cost for everything is $29.68. So if I am selling my copies for $30 on my website, then I am making my money immediately. Okay. Now, it is always better to buy in bulk. However, there is risk reward that comes with that. Okay. So 20 books costs me about $6.53 per book. There's some fluctuation when you go from per book to ordering in bulk. And again, this is through Ingram Spark. So my subtotal for the books, just the printing, is $130.60, plus the $1.99 handling fee, because, moving the books from A to B and putting them in a box apparently requires a handling fee. The shipping cost is $29.63. The total cost to me is $162.22. Okay. Now, if I sell one signed copy for $25 through my website, not counting the shipping that I would need to charge people, right? My total retail value is $500. So 20 bucks times 25. Still having $1.78 per transaction times 20 comes out to roughly $35.60. Total variable costs, including the printing and the shipping, $197.82. Now, if I sell all of my books, here's what it looks like. My gross profit is $302.18. My profit margin is 60%. And my break-even point is 8 books sold, which means I've essentially sold $200 in books. I have covered the cost of printing those books and getting those books to me. And then when I have sold at least 8 books, I have covered that. And now everything above that is profit. Okay. Or at least gross profit. Because if you're taking into account, okay, out of that, I need to take out X for, this, and then Y for that, there is going to be a little bit of a difference there. Now, the risk is that you have to spend more, and which means, you're forking out, a couple $100s for books that is now going to sit if you're not actively doing something about it. If you're not actively promoting signed copies. So there is some risk with that because you're just sitting on money unless you don't sell out. Your break-even point must be hit in order to accurately track all of that stuff, and before you make a profit. And then you have to ship the items, right? So you have to charge an additional amount to what you're advertising. So if my books are $25, if I'm shipping media mail, which is roughly for my sized book, my book weighs roughly 2 pounds. So it's going to be $3.38 ish, right? So I need to at least make sure that I'm having enough there to cover that cost. Probably just round it up to $5. It's a straight 30 cost for shipping is included. Boom, makes it a lot easier. Now the reward is you can make more per sale than you do on Amazon, which is fantastic. You can charge more for signed copies, and people are more than happy to pay, trust me. And you also have more creative control over your work, and it builds a stronger relationships and email base. So if you have people who are making a purchase, they are giving you their email in order to be able to make that purchase, you now have an email that is someone you can reach out to. You can sign them up for something. I would recommend having some sort of sign up on like a thank you page where there's the ability for them to immediately be like, oh yeah, I want to sign up because I want to know more. I want to know when the next book coming out, all that kind of stuff. Now, to kind of quickly touch on that, you make more per book than you do on Amazon. So where I'm at, there was a large festival back in 2021. And so I had a booth and I had roughly 38 copies of my book on hand, all paperback. And I was charging $25 per book, just a signed copy, $35 if they wanted to get the book and one of the full color maps that I had created. And I didn't have a ton of takers for those. But I sold mostly, the majority of my books were just the straight paperback, and people didn't bat an eye. Not an eye was batted that day. And so I ended up giving away 2 books and then selling some. So it came out roughly to about $700 gross. Once I accounted for my incurred costs of the venue, the insurance that was required, I still ended up netting approximately $400 or $500. Like, it was a really good, and that was just one weekend. That was literally from a Friday to Saturday, Friday to Sunday afternoon. So it was really, really good. Had a ton of people to talk to, all that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing events, then, and I know that it's all very kind of still up in the air, with COVID and stuff, so as able to, I highly recommend being able to sell your books in person at those types of events. If not, selling them online is kind of the next best thing. It is going to require a little bit more work. Now, all of this is assuming that you have self-published, right? So you own the full rights. You can distribute your books however you want to. They're yours, okay? Now, selling your ebook through your website. Since you have the distribution rights, you can also sell your ebook through your website for an even better margin, which we all like. As authors, we do actually enjoy making money off of our hard work. And you don't have to worry about shipping. You don't have to worry about printing. It's just the transaction fee and delivering the product. Product delivery gets a little bit tricky, but there are ways around that. So if I chose to sell my ebook for $5 through my website, I pay $1.78 per transaction. My total variable cost is $1.78, and my gross profit is $3.22. My gross profit margin is 64. Now, as a quick note, if you are on Amazon, you can do the 70% based on whatever it is that you're having it, but you're likely going to be pricing it slightly lower than you could get away with on your website. And that is because you're the author and you don't have the middleman. So Amazon's not taking any cuts or anything like that. It's straight profit to you. And you get paid instantly. As soon as it is finished processing the payment, it drops into your bank, which is fabulous, because then you don't have to wait 3 months in order to get paid for August. Like, that's not fun. We would like to get paid now, right? So keep that in mind. You make more and you make more faster being able to do it this way. Now, setting it up. This is where the more technical side comes into play. I know that everything else sounds super, super technical, but this is where the kind of nitty gritty kind of comes in. So setting up everything on your website takes patience, not a virtue that most authors, including myself, have. Now, you might be building it a little bit at a time until you're finally ready to launch it, and that is totally okay. You want to take your time to set this up appropriately. So starting with the business name, getting the business bank account. Granted, if you already have published and you haven't done any of that, you can roll that stuff over into a business account. It requires a lot of updating, still worth it, okay? Now, things that you have to have in place, at least that I recommend that you have in place before launching your store. You need to know your shipping cost. So are you going to cover the cost of shipping, or are you going to charge for shipping? There are lots of different things to kind of think about with that. Media mail is the least expensive. It also can take between 5 to 9 days. And in addition to that, the USPS has the United States Postal Service reserves the right to open the package and check the contents to make sure that it is actually media, i.e. your book. Now, I have done media mail, and I've had at least 3 packages arrive without the book. Take that as you will. I don't think everybody is out there stealing books. But that is the risk that you run, is that if somebody just kind of wants to be a dirtbag, they're going to be a dirtbag. If you are doing a flat rate shipping box, you're going to pay more, but they're not going to check it. So kind of keep that in mind. Figure out what you want to do there. Your payment systems. Are you doing Venmo? Are you doing Stripe? Are you doing Square? Are you doing PayPal? You don't actually have to pay for a full e-commerce package from a web host. There are kind of back-end ways that you can set it up, particularly if you're using PayPal and Square. Those are the ones that I use. Those are the ones that I've kind of done some toying around with. That would be an entirely different video just going into that. So just kind of on the big picture side, figure out who you'd want to use. SEO, search engine optimization. This has to come into play. This is basically how you are found on the internet. Okay, so it's a mixture of long form content, thoughtful articles, keywords, all those types of things kind of wrapped up into one thing. You want to make sure that you understand kind of the basics of SEO. So I'm, doing some research on it, and figuring out how do you get found? How does your book get found? Okay. The descriptions for your items. Now, this is more along the lines of if you've purchased an e-commerce package and you're adding the descriptions on the website itself. But you want to figure out how are you going to sell it to people with your description. You want forms. So you have to figure out like the payment form. Again, that's if it's on the website, they're going to have different forms for people to fill out. Name, address, phone number, looking at email address, all that kind of stuff. That's going to need to be set up in the form. Ideally, you want a thank you page that when people make the purchase, it auto redirects them to this thank you page. Now, unfortunately, Squarespace does not do this well unless you know how to code. It's kind of ridiculous, and this is the reason why I've removed my books from there, is because I can't get a dedicated thank you page for each individual item. You can do this on Wix, and I'm pretty sure you can probably do it on Weebly and what was the other one? WordPress. So I'm pretty sure you can do those, but you want to redirect them to this thank you page, because that is where you can ask them, would you like to sign up for my newsletter? Or would you like to do X, Y, or Z, right? You're trying to get them to do an additional thing for you that helps you and that is of interest to them. Next is the delivery of the ebook. How are you going to do that? Honestly, Squarespace is, now granted, I have my entire website on Squarespace. I do love Squarespace, but there are issues that I have with it. Delivering an ebook is not ideal on Squarespace. I don't like it. So what I would recommend, and this would require an account on BookFunnels, is on that thank you page, you can actually link to, or you can send up an automated email to send to the purchaser a direct link to BookFunnels. BookFunnels will host the files in EPUB, MOBI, and PDF and distribute them for you. And then if anybody runs into an issue, it's BookFunnels' problem. They have to be the ones to fix it. That's great. That means you're not playing customer service, which is fabulous. It means more time for writing. And then a social share image. You want to make sure that if somebody is sharing it, if you're sharing it, that it's enticing. It looks nice. You don't want some bloated, pixelated, distorted picture being shared of your beautiful book. You just don't want that. So you would need to kind of get all of that stuff set up, ideally before you started selling your book. Now, This one I spent days researching, and it was excruciating, and it still left me with very little in the way of an answer. So sales tax, it's incredibly complex, and that would be the understatement of 2022. So you are definitely going to want to talk to a CPA about it, especially if you plan on selling merch in the future. Merch specifically from your website. Okay, if you are purchasing the merch and it's arriving at your house, and then from your house you are selling it, you, depending on your state, are going to have to collect sales tax on behalf of the state. And then you're going to have to remit that to them come tax time, which is always so much fun. Thankfully, I live in Oregon. I don't have to deal with that. We get gouged in other ways. But when it comes to the sales tax, this is not something that you want to play around with at all, unless you have a really good CPA who understands it and they can walk you through the process. I'm not equipped to be able to do that. I hardly got an answer. So, but the general sense is that even if you live in a state that doesn't collect sales taxes and you start selling a ton of merch and you're making over 100K for at least for most states a year doing that, you're then going to have to remit sales tax to those states. So 100,000, let's say I'm selling to Idaho, and Idaho has a sales tax, and at the threshold of, let's, for the sake of argument here, hit $100,000 in sales, I now have to pay the sales tax to them, right? For every purchase over that amount. It's crazy. So that's another reason why I was like, you know what? I don't need this kind of complication in my life. So I took my stuff down. If you are selling digital merch and stuff like that, or if you're just like, I'm not exactly Stephen King, I'm going to sell onesie twosies here and there, it's not an issue. Okay. Now, website hosting. This is a special place in my heart because I've had to rebuild my website at least 3 or 4 times on multiple different websites, hosting platforms. So if you don't have a website, you need one. Just as an author, period, you should have an author website. If you don't have one, you need to get one. It is so important. It adds to your credibility. It adds to your professionalism. Like, you really need to have one. And there are ways to do it for free that are still legitimate, that still look professional, but you need to get one. So best to wait to pay for anything until you have your business entity set up, because then it's a write-off. Like, that's the other big thing about being a business entity, is that you can write off a lot of the stuff, which is fantastic. And to start, you're going to need a domain name that you control. So it's not the freebie that you get from Wix or Squarespace or any other places. You own it. Okay. The best place to find those is namecheap.com. We're not sponsored by Namecheap, and there's no affiliation with them. It's just, I've used them for years. I own like 6 domains through them. 4 of them I don't even use. But I wanted them. So, and it's like $14 a year. So you can find really cheap domain names there. And, play around with it a little bit. sdhoward.com was taken. So I had to go with sdhowardauthor.com. No biggie. That may be what you have to do. If I had done my full name, I probably would have got it. The shorter the URL, the easier to remember, the better. But you do what you do with it, what you can, right? So once you have your domain name, you're going to need to choose whom you will host your domain with. So here's kind of the general breakdown, right? Wix is great for customization, iffy on SEO. Now they've come a long way since I was with them several years ago, and they've really upped their SEO game, which is great. There are still aspects of it that I don't particularly care for, and I find to be just an enormous pain in my backside, because I've helped several authors build their websites on Wix. It's a great option, and it has a free option. You can set up a website for free if you so choose. So it's a good option. It's probably the most user-friendly out of the bigger platforms. Now, Squarespace is great for responsive websites, not so great with the post-purchase follow-up, as I have mentioned. Squarespace is designed to be responsive. So whether it's on a desktop, a tablet, or mobile, in theory, it's supposed to respond well to the dimensions and all that kind of stuff. I haven't looked at it from anywhere other than my desktop, so can't really say for sure if that's accurate, but that is kind of what they sell, right? Now, Weebly has a direct integration with Square for payments and inventory. And Weebly is, I kind of joke around saying Weebly is like that second cousin that you forget you had, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's you. That's kind of Weebly. It's very low key, very easy to use. I don't think that they're like super robust in terms of SEO. And again, that's search engine optimization, how you get found, the tools to help you get found. But it does err more on the side of, while you have slightly less control over certain aspects, it makes up for it in a drag and drop template, very kind of user friendly. Squarespace, it's one of those things where if you don't drop it right, your entire website shifts to the left and you're just like, what just happened? Wix, you can literally drag and put it wherever the heck you want. Weebly, I think, is very similar to Squarespace, but a lot more user friendly. And the direct integration with Square means that you can actually set up a store in Square that you can sell from, and it collects all of that data for you. That is super, super nice. WordPress is the best, is the gold standard for SEO. Based on all of the research that I've done, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of the internet is hosted on WordPress or is a WordPress site. So it's really, really good. However, it can get expensive depending on how technical you want to get with this. It could be very, very expensive. It is also, if you are not tech savvy, do not get WordPress. Just from the little bit that I've talked with people, and what I've noticed in talking to authors who are using WordPress, they tend to be techie. They tend to understand technology. And so they're the ones who are going to be using WordPress and kind of messing with some of the coding and stuff. You can pay people to edit WordPress for you, but if you are wanting to make updates, you don't necessarily want to be reliant on somebody else to do those for you. So those are some of the kind of the pros and cons of all of them. If I had to personally choose, I would still choose Squarespace because I like the design. I like the overall look. But it lacks some things in the customization that really irritate me. And for the analytics, or excuse me, not the analytics, for the e-commerce, I'm not thrilled with it. But because I'm not doing e-commerce on there now, for just hosting the website, like, it's phenomenal. I like it. Now, lastly, you're going to need to choose one of the e-commerce plans available through the different platforms. That being said, I have told you that you can actually do this on the back end. So for instance, if you're doing Square, you can actually create an item with an online checkout that is linked to a button on your website, and you never have to set up an e-commerce account. So you're saving some money there. You're losing some data if that's a big thing that matters to you. But if you're wanting to kind of integrate it all into your website and just kind of keep it all in one place, then you're going to have to pick an e-commerce platform or a e-commerce plan. But there are ways outside of that, so you can kind of save yourself a few bucks. Now, why should you sell from your website? You get better profits. It builds better email lists because you have buyers, direct buyers. Here's the thing. Amazon does not tell you who buys your books. If they're buying your book through your website, guess who gets to find out what their name, potential address, and their email addresses. You do. And particularly with the email address, it means you have the ability to target them and let them know about the exciting things that are coming up. Okay. So it builds better email lists. It creates stronger relationships because they are invested in your book, which is what you want. You can add merch to your store later on to your website. If you're selling bookmarks, if you're selling character cards, if you're selling wallpapers, whatever your thing is, you'd be able to do it. So that's one of the big benefits. More creative control, which is always nice, especially for the indie author. You can run discounts and promotions whenever the frick you want to. You can create your own coupon codes for your store and disperse them. That's awesome. Less so with Amazon. It's great for branding, right? Author branding is something that I think too few authors actually think about in the long term. It's like, what do you want to be known for? And then it adds to your SEO game. So the more stuff you have on your website, and if it's done well, the more likely you are to be found. When people search for you, when people search for your book, when people search for a book, and then it's like, oh, I didn't know that website existed. Boop. And suddenly they're on your website and they're, binging all of their money on your stuff. Can't get much better than that, right? Now, why you shouldn't sell from your website. It takes a lot of time to set it up if you've never done it before. There's a huge learning curve, and you really have to watch tutorials on how to do it. Depending on the platform you choose, the way that you're going to want to set it up, the intricate details of how all of that looks, you are going to want to watch, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time on YouTube University or any of their tutorials, Squarespace tutorials, Wix tutorials, whatever it is, you're going to need to watch all of those and watch them a lot. So the next thing is you have to manage inventory. And I could not figure out an effective way to do this. And I know that there are people who are wonderful at it. And if anybody wants to do it for free, hey, I'm looking. But managing inventory is actually very, very difficult to get started if you've never, ever done it before. Then you have to calculate all of your costs. And in addition to that, you have to worry about sales tax, you have to worry about shipping, and then there's the domain and hosting fees. Ideally, you have your website anyway, so the domain and hosting fees, I feel like, is just kind of a wash. But everything else, if you don't want to deal with it, it's probably not going to be for you. All right, so here are some of the takeaways for you guys. 1, you're making more money, which is always a good thing as an indie author. It's hard enough as it is. All of the places that you can promote your book on Amazon, Kobo, on Barnes & Noble, all that stuff is really, really great. But you are then having to wait several months in order to actually get paid. If you're selling through your website, particularly the ebook, because that has kind of the highest margins, then you're getting paid instantly. And that is a great feeling. It's a lot of work because you have to then drive traffic and you have to explain to people how the buying process works via your website. That being said, it's really, really nice. So it is something that I do highly recommend that you at least take into consideration, especially for the ebook, because you own the rights to it and it's less complicated than it's going to be with a physical book. 2, you should have a website. You should absolutely have an author website right now. And it doesn't mean that you have to suddenly just throw a bunch of stuff onto a website and then publish it because I'm saying so. I mean, do the research on it. If you don't have one, figure out which one is going to be the best for you. Wix has a free option, as does Weebly. Squarespace does not. So if you're wanting to get started and kind of play around with that, check those out. Find which one works best for you and which one is going to have that feel that you're looking for. And then start building on it, right? As far as general setup for our website, I'll give you a quick tip. Homepage, about page, book page, contact page. Those 4 things, those are all you need to get started. If you want to add a blog, if you want to add, media, meaning like, podcast interviews and stuff that you've done, then you can add that as you go. But you don't need that. You just need those 4 to start with. Okay. And then lastly, you can have the creative control over your book, which is kind of what we as authors want. Ideally, right? You can go and do events and book signings and other things out there. Again, kind of COVID depending. And you can sell a lot. You can push books. I made more selling physical copies of my book in 2021 than I did with Amazon, Kobo, and Ingram Spark combined. Okay. Over a year. And I sold more physical copies at in-person events than I did for the entire year anywhere else online. That's big. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of selling your physical signed copies. People want it. People want the signed copy. Drop a little note in there for the reader. Be like, hey, thank you so much for your support. It means the world. Hope you enjoy the book. And then you do that whoosh, flourish. Man, people go nuts. So keep that in the back of your mind. I hope this has helped you guys. If it has, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below if you have questions. Like, we're always looking to try and help you guys. And so if you have questions, please make sure to drop them down in the comments below. We're going to be checking on them and replying as often as we possibly can to try and help answer your guys' questions about publishing, about writing, all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, we can educate, empower, and motivate you guys on your publishing journey until your book is published, and then even then beyond that.